Today, we're going to go over the brand new update Softube just came out with that changes everything we knew up till now about Amp Room. The biggest change, Amp Room is no longer the product, but the platform for 4 different guitar or bass-oriented suites you can purchase from Softube. You'll purchase a suite like the Metal Suite or the Marshall Suite, and Amp Room will come with it. For those who already own Amp Room, you'll get the Vintage Suite, Bass Suite, and Metal Suite for free. Amp Room Marshall Edition owners can update to all 4 new suites also for free. Each suite will have its own bundle of amps, cabs, and pedals to go along with it, and if you purchase multiple suites, you'll then be able to swap them in and out of the signal flow in suite mode, but I'll get to that a little bit later. The workflow and UI have gotten a major overhaul. When you opened up the previous version of Amp Room, you were greeted by this empty field, like a big sandbox for you to play in. Building everything from the ground up is a pretty powerful way of customizing your tone and really works well for those who have the time to tweak and dial everything to perfection. But sometimes you might not want to build the signal from scratch. Like when you get a great riff idea and you just need to open up an amp sim and jam it out. Sometimes what you need is just a simpler way of getting your idea from your head to reality. So to help with that, they've split their UI into 2 different views, Suite and Studio View. Suite View is now the default view and has a layout that a lot of guitarists will be familiar with. From left to right, you have your pre-effects pedal section, amp, cab, post-effects section, and post-EQ. On the right-hand side, you'll notice a menu with available Amp Room suites, Metal Suite, Marshall Suite, Bass Suite, and Vintage Suite. Click any of these and it'll take you to a default preset, and then you can start jamming and then swap in and out components as you like. One thing I noticed that I would want changed and have already brought up with Softube for the future updates, in suite mode, if you swap one head for another and then back to try and compare tones, all of the changes you made to the original head go away. So a workaround for that would be to copy your signal chain from one scene to another and then make the changes you want to compare to the new scene. If you decide that you either want to add extra routing or effects that don't fit within this architecture, or you just prefer the old view, you can easily switch over to Studio View, which is what they call the old UI design, by clicking the Studio button. This will take your current signal chain and set it up for a Studio View. You can also go the opposite direction and take a signal chain you created in Studio View over to Suite View. However, your signal chain does have to conform to a specific format in order to switch to Suite mode. If you hover over the Suite button, it'll give you a diagram on how to map it. But how does it sound? Let's bring up the default presets in the different suites, look at how the new UI functions, and then we'll go over the tones I dialed for the demo at the beginning of the video. All right, so here is the Metal Suite. We'll go ahead and start with that, with the brand new 50-watt 6L6 Vildsint amp head. This is a new module even for previous Amp Room owners. Yeah, that sounds pretty good for a default preset. So let's quickly go over how you're going to kind of navigate through the UI as well as adding or taking away blocks. So available blocks are going to be here at the bottom. So in the Metal Suite, you're going to have available the Mainstay or 100 watt, High Gain 100 watt, Vildsint 50 watt 6L6, the Marshall JCM 800, so you can swap in between those 4. But what about adding or taking away blocks? So it works similarly to the previous UI design, so if I wanted to turn this into more of a lead channel, I can take my delay, drag the block up, and then drop it in the space. Same thing with my reverb. Let's bring the mix down, tone, feedback, mix, delay, treble, bass, etc., etc. And then if you want to take the blocks away, you can hit the X to delete them or hit the little circle to bypass them. I will say another thing that I found while I was testing this out that I've also brought up to Softube. Say you have this section, so the compressor is on and the delay is off. If I were to bypass this section at the bottom, both are off. When I re-engage, both are now on. So that's a little something that they still have to work out on the back end, but I know that they're on it at this point. Along with several new modules and the workflow, you also have a brand new layout for your cabinets as well. So you have your microphone selection, your mic placement, which if you kind of jam the microphone up against the speaker, it'll start angling it so you can do sort of your Friedman technique. Below that, you have your tone controls, and then you can drag and drop your different cabinets to swap them out. On top of that, they implemented a parametric EQ at the very end. You can place it wherever you like. So if you didn't like the parametric EQ being here at the very end, you wanted to place that before your delays and reverbs, you can take your parametric EQ and drop that in the field, and then it'll add it there. You can make all of your adjustments as you like. But what if you wanted to use modules from different suites? So they've added this little arrow. It says show all amps. This is going to show you all available amps that you have from every single suite that you have. You can click the arrow again to go back to just the specific suite. So if I go over to Marshall suite, it's going to be the same thing. So they have this little arrow, all the Marshalls down there below. Click the arrow, then you'll have available suites at the bottom. All right, from here, let's go ahead and take a look at the tones I dialed in for the demo. So there's 4 different tones that I used throughout the entirety of this project. I quad-tracked rhythms, and I have 2 different lead tones. And I used a mixture of the Metal Suite and the Marshall Suite to get exactly what I needed. We'll take a look at this very first lead, kind of pedal tony intro tone. Really, I didn't use too much different from the default Metal Suite preset. I turned down the gain a little bit, did some stuff on the tone stack. I kept it on the high gain calm because I felt like that worked the best for this particular style. Added some delay and reverb, and that's pretty much it. I didn't even really work with the parametric EQ at the end because it sounded really good off the bat. Very first rhythm tone that we're going to take a look at, also working with the Metal Suite. Mainly default presets again. I didn't really venture too far from the American amplification, these oversized 4x12 impulse responses, because they just gave me exactly what I wanted. Didn't really mess with the EQ as well. Let's listen to this in solo. Next up, we have the Marshall Suite. Yes, the Marshall Suite. Swapped up to the JCM 800 because that's just a solid amp. I turned on the Tube Screamer and then dropped out the lows and low mids pretty consistently because these Marshall cabs are pretty woofy in that low mid range. But I really wanted to do something with the panning of these particular guitars and as well as blending the tones, because these Marshall tones are definitely warmer than the Wildsynth Metal Suite tones, and I wanted to kind of combine those to kind of Wildsynth's going to hold down that top end, that sheen, that brightness, that presence, and that's going to be panned all the way out to the left and the right, whereas the Marshall is going to really kind of take up all that low mid, like that mid forward kind of space, and be panned a little bit closer to center. I think maybe I did like 60 or 70 left and right, but I really wanted to get that sort of like wide rhythm guitars by panning them that way. Let's listen to the Marshall Suite in solo, and then I'll bring in the Wildsynth and then bring it into context in the full mix, so that way you hear what they sound like in context. And then for that third part in the track that's more soft, kind of more chordal, melodic section, what I did was I brought the volume of the Marshall suite up and turned the overall volume of the rhythm guitars down, so that way I could just make them a little bit warmer and bring a little bit of a dynamic shift to the rhythm guitars without doing too much to change the overall tone between the different suites. And then let's go ahead and listen to the last lead. The previous takes were all recorded with my Hoppus 7-string. This lead was recorded on my Strandberg 6-string. I changed this one around in the metal suite pretty considerably. I used the Craft pedal up front, the main stayer as my head, and then I kind of just to bring into focus the modular system and the ecosystem that really brings a lot of like versatility and power to your tones. This is not an amp room specific plugin. The Tape Echoes is its own plugin that has a modular component to it, so you can add it to all of your amp room suites, which is really, really cool because this one does have really great reverb as well as delay, and really fits with this lead. You can see I automated the dry wet knob to go up at the very end, so that way I wouldn't get as much of that background hiss coming through because I used a single coil for this solo. Okay, so how do I feel about this new update? I think Softube's amp room has generally, and still is, a producer's tool. One that can create any tone you can think of if you have the time and patience to work it out. But I think what Softube really wants is to start reaching out to guitarists who are in the market for new amp sims, as well as the producers. I think they've done a great job trying to give the best of both worlds to musicians who want the flexibility of a modular system with the convenience of the current standard amp sim workflow. I can definitely respect a company that not only listens to their customer base, but also tries to innovate on their behalf to give them what they want. Links to the amp room page will be in the description below, as well as the presets from the demo. And as always, I'll catch you in the next video.